GNT show is intended for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. Live long and prosper.
Are friends with benefits?
Speaking of having a good time, Terry.
Dayton broke the G&T show. This is now the David Mack
Appreciation Hour. You assholes.
What is it about this guy that people love him so much?
With his purple velvet cape and his crown. I thought it was a little much when he had us carry him in the studio on a throne. I am awesome! Look what I have done! Look what I have brought upon the world!
There is an urge to go, yeah.
I heard rumors that you might be working on something else, but we won't prod much. I was going to say it.
I'm going to pry a little.
Dare you? How dare you ask me to change it? Do you not understand the majesty of my genius? And the guy sitting next to me looked at me like he was, like I'd crapped in his hat.
Yeah, it's the professionalism that sells the show. That's right.
It's Terry again from the G&T Show, and we're back with another supplemental log. This time I am pleased to have Star Trek Online developer Jesse Heinig here to talk briefly about some of the work he's been able to do in the Star Trek magazine with some of the prose work, which is really unusual for a developer to be able to get into, is to start writing actual stories that involve the characters from a computer game. And so Jesse, welcome to the G&T Show.
Thank you so much, Terry.
It's good to have you back, but in a different way, to be able to talk about something other than not just the work you do. You do an amazing amount of work for Star Trek Online. For those people who aren't familiar necessarily with the game, because we do have a lot of listeners who don't play Star Trek Online, but they're always interested in developing and writing, tell them exactly what it is that you do for Cryptic Studios and for the Star Trek Online team.
I'm a content designer for Star Trek Online, which means that my role primarily is to implement new missions and story content into the game. I'll take outlines from our dedicated writer Christine Thompson, and then I will turn those into missions and gameplay that the player will experience.
I think it's really great. If for those of you who have not yet played Star Trek Online, I highly recommend that you do so, because it is a free-to-play game, meaning you can download it for free, you can play it for free, and there's nothing keeping you from continuing to play it for free for the entire. They never ask you to pay money for any of the expansion or any of the playable content. The only thing that you want to pay for are things that you actually don't necessarily need to play the game, or if you want some added benefits, you can always do that, but it never hinders your play. Jesse, you've been participating in a great new thing since the advent of the Enterprise E into the game Star Trek Online. We have a new oh, I'm sorry, I said the E, didn't I? Oh my gosh, it's the F. Don't worry. Yeah, people, you can totally kick my ass for that one. But we have the Enterprise F now in the game, which is a fantastic new crew. And to be able to say that you are a part of the writing of the characters of the new Enterprise, the newest Enterprise that we have seen since Nemesis. What is it that you like about being able to just kind of dig into and actually write prose? And how do you find it different from writing prose than writing for story and character in the computer game?
Well, it's a fantastic opportunity, of course. I'll start with your last question first. It's different from the computer game in that a computer game is first and foremost a game, and that means that it's an interactive experience. So we have to cater to the player's expectation that they are going to be interacting with objects and characters in this game, that they're going to be doing things and making choices and making decisions and pressing buttons and whatnot in order to cause events to happen and succeeding or maybe not succeeding in various challenges that they face. as opposed to television and fiction writing, which is a more passive form of entertainment, where we're delivering to you what the experience is, sort of in a contained form. And that means that the parameters are sometimes different. In a video game, you have to say, okay, the pacing demands that most people are going to expect some action here, and we're going to put in some action so that they can use their cool abilities on their starship or what have you. But in fiction, you can usually come in with an idea that you want to explore and say, okay, here's my central premise, and I'm going to explore this idea and go in that direction in terms of telling a story. And you don't have to necessarily hit a set of required beats that you would in a video game. You don't have to worry about, okay, I need to make the player feel like they're doing something and interacting and pressing buttons and making things happen. The player's turning the page or watching the screen. For me, it was a real treat to get to work with the Enterprise F, partly because the characters that Christine Thompson has built in Star Trek Online as the crew of the Enterprise are really wonderful characters. Many of them harken back to some of the favorites that we of archetypes that we know and love in Star Trek, between the presence of an O'Brien as the chief engineer, or having a Vulcan once again as part of the ensemble, which we hadn't seen except in Tuvok's appearance in Voyager.
Right. It's the first time we ever got, and now we actually have, for the first time ever, a truly non-human captain of an Enterprise.
That was also one of those really interesting decisions that we can do, because the game and the fiction are not necessarily constrained by the limitations of television. And in television, there's two main reasons that they haven't had an alien captain as a main character from everything that I've read about.
Right.
One being, of course, the egregious makeup work. If your captain is your principal, who's going to be under the camera most of the time and doing all of the shooting, and has all of this heavy makeup work, it's a great burden to put on an actor. And they've gotten closer and closer to doing that. With, for instance, Shran in Enterprise became a major character, and he was a huge amount of makeup work for Jeffrey Combs. But number two is that the writers are saying Star Trek is about the human experience and about who we are and who we're going to become, and how we overcome our problems and become better people. And it's often uses aliens as a metaphor or stand-in for humanity.
Right.
But they want a human captain because they want the captains to be easily relatable for the audience. If you are doing a captain who is an alien, then there's a temptation for your stories to get drawn into, well, what's this alien species about? What's their point of view? What's their perspective on things? And to lose the human perspective, the perspective that we're trying to tell in these stories, that says, here's why this is important to us, to the people who are writing these stories and experiencing them.
I agree. Now, one of the things that we talked about on our show quite a bit is the fact that, having an Andorian captain of the Enterprise is one of those nice breakaways, and it's an ability that you guys get to play with, namely because the stories that are played in Star Trek Online, you're the captain. And so the stories that you're telling are the stories of the captains of the players. And this is the first time you're ever really going to see the captain of the Enterprise F isn't necessarily the main character of the game. So one of the things that you have been, the reason why I have you here and talking to you here today is because you and Christine have worked together building these characters. The Star Trek magazine has now begun to publish your stories regarding and helping you to flesh out the actual bases of the characters that you're putting into the game. And part 2 of The Gale, which is a short, I would call it almost a novella. I mean, I wouldn't call it a short story as much as I would call it a nice length, a base or a foundation for the characters. How did you get involved? How did you get the idea, or how were you and Christine approached to say, we would love to see these characters fleshed out more within the pages of Star Trek magazine?
Well, Cryptic, as a licensor, has regular contact with CBS, who puts us in touch with other licensors as well. And licensee? I forget which is the licensor and which is the licensee. We'll fix it in post. So
we are tired, you guys. You have no idea. It's Sunday afternoon and we're just gone.
So they will occasionally put us in contact with other licensed subholders. And that gives us the opportunity to talk to them and say, hey, wouldn't it be great if we cross-promote? We all love Star Trek. We're here for the same reasons. What are some interesting things we can do together? Star Trek Magazine, of course, is always hungry for new content, new stories. There's been a limited amount for them to talk about. They get to cover convention detail. They get to cover the new Abrams movies. But without a currently running Star Trek TV series, that means that they are very happy to get other new Star Trek content that's been licensed by CBS or Paramount.
And there's quite a few people who are out there who really do believe and have an affection for Star Trek Online, because it really is the only source of consistent, growing Star Trek story that we are getting since the end of Enterprise.
Well, we do try to keep a very internally consistent storyline. Now, I don't want to undersell the other license holders. Pocketbooks, for instance, still continues to produce novels in the Star Trek universe, but many of them are self-contained or a trilogy of a story, and so they are not always internally consistent with each other. But they're still good stories, and they're fun to read, and I think you were just talking with David Weber and some of the other authors and promoting their work, and they're churning out fantastic amounts of work, which is great. Keeping Star Trek alive is good for all of us. But we really like to say, okay, we're taking a particular period in time, we're springboarding off of events that we saw in the movie Nemesis and everything that came before, and then advancing this storyline and continuing to move it forward in a narratively coherent fashion. And we've been doing so consistently, adding on for several years.
Right.
So that gives us a great body of Trek lore to draw upon.
Right. Well, I have to say that you guys have done a phenomenal job. And for those of you who have not yet read The Gale, Parts 1 and 2 in Star Trek Magazine, it's not the most recent, because the most recent magazine actually has Catherine's story called Chief in it. But the last episode, the previous two issues, which I believe were number 43 and 42, I was right. Number 43 and number 42 for the American issues of Star Trek magazine. Do yourself a favor, pick those up. They are available on ebook, so no excuses. You can't say that, oh, it's too far away or it's going to take too long. You can download them. It's an easy thing to do. Jesse, thank you so much for joining us at GNT Show. All the best of luck with Star Trek Online and with any writing that you choose to do. We want to see what's coming more from the Enterprise F crew.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Take care, Jesse.
There will be more to come.
Excellent. That's great news.
Music for the GNT Show is provided by Warp 11, Grethor, 5-Year Mission, and Andrew Allen's Smooth Federation.
GNT Show is a Busy Little Beaver production.